Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening at last, everyone. You are listening to the Outer Realm Thursday night segment. We are broadcasting live at last here on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast, 107.7 FM from New Orleans. We're fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee, who have been a part of our journey for the last several years. So thank you, Folgers. We couldn't do it without you, nor would we want to. Also, big thank you to Justin Snicker, a.k.a. Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon, for the contribution of his time, his music, and his voice for the intro you just heard. He's an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found on all of your favorite music streaming platforms. Also, big thanks to Steve McGinnis, the artist behind our logos here at the show. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram. Also specializes in the horror and Halloween genre, but does incredible commission pieces of any sort. So... I don't know if Mercury isn't getting me, technology is. So StreamYard just decided to do, this new update, and it's just pulverizing, a lot of people. They like to just change things, and I don't know. Anyway, we are here. I see the chat room all lining up, and I just want to acknowledge everybody. Adrian, hello. Wayne, hello. We've got Annette, hello. Sherry, hello. Carol Ann, Ethereal, hello. Annette, yeah, got you. Okay, we're getting there. Heidi, hello. So we're definitely, Carrie, hello. Oh my God, you guys are awesome. And patient. I will have to give you all an A for patience, and I adore you all for it. Hi, Michelle. So yes, go Folgers. Absolutely, Wayne. So tonight, my dear friend Laura DiDio joins me to further discuss the DeFeo murders, which, by the way, happened November 13th, 1974. 51 years. So we're going to recap some stuff. She's going to share some information that she hasn't disclosed before, if time allows. And that's a big if at this point, but we can go over a little bit. She's going to talk to us about some of her paranormal experiences. So lots and lots of stuff to do and to talk about. So put your seatbelts on. Hi, Mish. Hi, Mark. Hi, Carrie. And my hair looks wicked good. Thank you very much. And the hair. Anyway, you guys, you're all very flattering. But without further ado, Laura DiDio. Hello.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you for having me again. And I apologize in advance to everyone. I had some outpatient eye surgery a few days ago. It was moved up. And so I'm not, if you see me shining with the glasses, I keep trying to adjust the lights, but
Yeah. And having your own tech issues today too with sound. It's just like, I'm like, don't worry about it. I'm trying to work out my own tech issues. We're all in the same boat.
I know.
Oh,
I thought it was me because I have several. I have the computer mic, and then I have another audio mic which I use to record. But hi, Zune.
Yeah. No, that's okay. Normally everything goes flawlessly, and we've never had a problem. You never had a problem trying to come on with us, and we've not had this problem before. So here we are at last. Gang's all here. Everybody's lining up, and you have sound. We have a clear board. I think it's safe to say we can begin the show. So 51 years of the DeFeo murders. So essentially November 13th, 1974 was the fateful night that, Ronald DeFeo, something happened. and just sort of lost it or got very calculated, and he killed 6 members of his family.
Well, and that's that. I was a teenager then.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, that's half a century ago. I was
Yeah.
in school, and that murder, fair to say, shocked Long Island, not just Amityville, but
Yeah.
the whole metropolitan area, because while murders were not uncommon in big metropolitan cities, to wit, New York, or some places like in Brooklyn or the rougher neighborhoods, this was the first murder outside of people going off to war in Amityville that had been committed in probably over half a century. And wasn't a single murder, it was a sextuple murder.
Yeah.
And it was a family murder. So it was shocking then, it was shocking now. Now, interestingly, Ronnie DeFeo Jr. had always had issues with his family. And nobody in Amityville who knew him, and most people had at least seen him around, was surprised when they heard he was connected to the murders. I think they knew that he had a contentious relationship with his father, Big Ronald DeFeo Sr. But even they were shocked when they heard he, 36 hours, 48 hours after the bodies were discovered, when he had burst into the bar, Henry's bar, and said, "Help, I think my family's been murdered." Of course, that was all a ruse on his part. Nobody was prepared for the fact that he shot his mother and his 4 siblings, Dawn, who was 18. Then you had the 13-year-old, the other daughter, okay, and the 2 brothers who were 12 and 9. And one of them had, the youngest one, John, was really stuck. He had had a football injury where he played for the local, St. Martin's school, the Catholic school, and he was in a wheelchair or using crutches. So he was sort of helpless. But when you see what had transpired, that was just, it was shocking then, it was shocking now. Not that they were shocked that Ronnie would be violent, because he was a punk. He was an entitled punk who came from an upper middle class family.
Right.
And he was not terribly bright. He was cunning. Hi, Heidi. Hi, Richard. But this was a situation where his family did not spare the rod, but they did spoil the child.
Yes.
And whether or not they created the monster or what have you, but going back to even when he was younger, and of course, the DeFeos were originally living in an apartment in Brooklyn. Ronnie DeFeo Sr. had married Louise Briganti. And 9 years after, they had married back in 1965, the Briganti family helped with the down payment, and some say that Michael Briganti Sr. was paying the mortgage on the house.
Wow.
Out in Amityville. So going from an apartment in Brooklyn to this beautiful, even then I think you would say, hi Mark, palatial 3-story home with a finished basement that had everything you could want. It was a suburban dream, as everybody knows. Boathouse, boat dock, because it backed up to the Amityville River, or the creek, as some people called it. And just a few blocks away is the Atlantic Ocean.
Wow.
Long Island Sound.
Yeah.
You had a built an in-ground swimming pool.
Hmm.
So
Essentially, it was the place to be.
yes, it was. I mean, it was
Mhm.
really
It
everybody's
reeked of
dream.
successful people, right?
Yes.
Essentially, that was, yeah,
But
yeah,
if we start at the beginning,
yeah.
um, Ronnie always had issues, even as a young child. There were stories, going back to when he was 8 or 9,
Mm.
when he was fighting with his dad.
Hmm.
A lot of people don't know that.
Hmm.
And there was an incident where the father really got angry with him and twisted his leg because he was that problematic. But they
Wow.
were having the DeFeos, were having a real problem with him. And when you think about what Brooklyn and Long Island were like 50 years ago, it was a society that was still centered a lot around churches, synagogues. Religion was a big part of the life.
Yeah.
And for an Italian family, Italian on both sides, they actually sent Ronnie to see a psychiatrist back when he was 9 or 10, which was which was unusual.
Yeah.
It was probably somewhat more commonplace among upper middle class, say WASPs or Jewish people, but for
Hmm.
sort of blue collar type Italians
Well,
or
they're very
Catholics.
private too, right, with their business, especially as
Yes,
business people.
yes. So Big Ronnie really would, he and Butch, as he was known in the family, would
Hmm.
get into it physically. And I mean, let's face it, anybody who's uh, knows anything about Italian families, people shout, scream at the dinner table, rolls will go flying. Not the
Yeah.
cannolis, though, not the
Yeah.
cannolis. Um, so that wasn't unusual, nor was the fact that they would fight and the fight would spill out onto the side lawn
Mm.
and Ronnie would take off in his car and then Big Ronnie would follow him and you'd hear the screech of brakes and mufflers. So neighbors in this rather quiet community otherwise got used to the sight of this fighting.
Mm.
But certainly it was disruptive to the younger children in the family. It was disruptive to the mother. And of course, there have long been, you know, it's long been known that there was a sometimes contentious relationship
Hmm.
between Louise and Big Ronnie. Uh, at the time, I mean, the way I look at Ronald DeFeo Sr., when people say he was abusive, yes, he was, but you must put it in the context of the times
Hmm.
from the 60s and 70s, where you look at some of these things, and corporal punishment was
Wasn't
somewhat,
uncommon, right?
no, it
Catholic or
was.
Christian families back then.
Well, you can even look at the old Leave It to Beaver show from the 50s and very early 60s,
Hmm.
and that's about as white bread and as sanitized as you can get. But they used to,
Yeah. Yeah.
even they would say, "You're going to get it. You're going to get
Yeah.
spanked or what have you."
Yeah.
Um, and certainly, it was disruptive to, as I said, to the other kids.
Hmm.
And Ronald DeFeo Sr., Big Ronnie,
Hmm.
would sometimes, I think, slap his wife around. There was the story about how Louise was going downstairs to do the laundry because the laundry room was in the basement,
Yeah.
and he pushed her down the stairs.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. But was he beating her all the time, or
Hmm.
was he what we think of today as abuse
Hmm.
is really horrific.
Hmm.
This didn't rise to that level. That said,
Hmm.
they were still a very close-knit family.
Hmm.
They were practicing Catholics. They went to church. All the kids
Hmm.
went to the Catholic school. I'm not sure if Ronnie Jr. Ever, he didn't graduate from high school, but he went to the Catholic school.
And he and Dawn were twins, is that right?
No, they were not
They weren't
twins.
twins? Or were they
No.
just similar in age?
No, they were 5 years apart. See,
Oh,
now
wow.
this is where you
Okay.
can see the disconnect in the marriage.
Right.
Because
Okay.
Ronnie was 23 at the time.
Yeah.
Dawn had just turned 18.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, so then
Yeah.
you've got another 5-year gap between Dawn and Allison, who was 13, but then there's only a 1-year age difference with Mark, who was 12, and then there's a 3-year age difference with John, the youngest one.
Very spaced out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, by all accounts, Allison, Mark and John, who were going to the local Catholic school, were very, very well liked by the kids in their school.
Yes.
Dawn was also very well thought of. She was going to Catherine Gibbs Secretarial School, at 18. I think there was some friction with her and her parents because many people who are familiar with this story will have heard the reports about Dawn having an older boyfriend in his early 30s who had been married, and she allegedly wanted to leave home and run away with him to Florida. I'm not sure how serious that was, but you've got an 18-year-old girl. She might have,
yeah, there's concerns.
Yeah. With her parents, but and of course Ronnie used that, and Butch used that
right
in later years to try and advance the theory that he only killed his father and that it was actually Dawn who proactively plotted to murder the parents because they wouldn't let her run away with the boyfriend.
So it was a good rouse, basically.
Yes, the issue with Ronnie is that he always had issues. There was something off with him from the beginning. And he always thought he could get over on everybody. He was looking to be a big shot because as problematic as he was to the family, he was still the family. They gave him a low-level job as basically an errand boy at the Carl Briganti Buick dealership, co-owned by his grandfather, Michael Briganti, whom Butch feared, and out of that fear was, I think, a grudging respect. Well, because he knew both sides of the family. One thing that is true as this story evolves and unwinds is that both sides of the family had connections to organized crime.
Yeah.
Okay, that was true, and there was something going on, some activities at the Carl Briganti Buick dealership that caused the Southern District of New York
to
be investigating and wiretapping
the
place. So there are elements here of, The Godfather, Truman Capote's in cold blood.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, Long Island, New York is really a collection of neighborhoods. You never know who you're going to bump into. One of my neighbors, and name drop alert here, who lived across the street from me, was Jonathan Favreau, who is the producer and actor who's been in a lot of things. Swingers, he's played Happy in the Marvel Avenger movies, etc. He grew up right across the street from me, and he and his dad used to always come over and borrow our lawnmower.
Right.
So, in that vein, the younger DeFeo boys were altar boys at St. Martin's Church with with the younger Baldwin brothers.
Right.
So there's all these, coincidences. But when the younger kids, with the exception of Ronnie, were very well liked.
Mm-hmm.
And the thought that Dawn would suddenly take a gun and decide to blow away her family,
Mm-hmm.
blow away the kids, with the exception
Mm-hmm.
of the father, which is what that was the theory Ronnie was trying to promote, among many
Mm-hmm.
wild varieties, is just absurd.
Right. Yeah. I remember seeing a television interview with him, because they would actually interview him throughout the decades, um, early on, I think, whenever, because he flip-flopped around a lot, with his stories. One is like the devil made me do it sort of thing, to it was my sister, to okay, maybe it was me with my dad.
It was a mafia hit. He had everything
Yeah.
going. Now,
Yeah.
again, he was not a high IQ person, but he was very cunning.
Yes.
So he was floating these theories. The issue is that because, he's not a mastermind,
Yeah.
he would
Yeah.
float the theories, and you could, easily debunk them. They fell
Yeah.
apart pretty quickly. I mean,
Yeah.
interestingly, to this day, and even at the conclusion of his trial, and we all know he was arrested about 48 hours after the murder, when the detectives, the Amityville homicide squad detectives, got a confession out of him after talking to him for 10 hours. And probably one of the few truthful things that came out of his mouth in all of this was when the detective said to him, "Well, why did you do it?" He says, "I don't know. It all happened so fast. And once I started shooting, I couldn't stop."
Mm.
Which is, the probably that's the closest thing you're going to get to the truth out of him.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I do wonder at some of the things that he confessed to. The other thing that is a mystery to this day is, what was his motive?
Yeah.
And Annette Munich,
Yeah.
I hope
Yeah.
I
We'll,
said
we'll
that
we'll
correctly.
get to
After the
that
first
too.
shot, why
Yeah.
didn't the rest of the family wake up? That's a good.
Yeah.
That's another mystery, and
Yeah.
we will get to that.
Well,
But
yeah, I've tagged it, so we'll come back to it. Yeah. Yeah.
why? Even at the end of the thing, the prosecuting, the DA, and the lawyers could
Hmm.
not determine a clear-cut motive. He was doing a lot of drugs that night. He was always doing a lot of drugs and alcohol.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he meant to. What really did it? Was it the combination of the drugs? Was it the fact? Okay, if we go back to the beginning here, he and his father were reaching a boiling point, because with all the stuff, legal and illegal, that was going on
Yeah.
at the Buick dealership,
Hmm.
everybody was cheating everybody. I mean, Ronnie Sr. was also allegedly skimming
Hmm.
off the top. The grandfather was doing some of his things, and in the background, nobody knew this until after the murders
Right.
occurred, that the place was being wiretapped by the Southern District, having nothing to do with the murders. They were looking into
The embezzlement and
alleged
such. Yeah.
illegal activities
Yeah.
going through money laundering, whatever, through
Mm.
that Buick dealership. Now,
Right.
we're not saying drugs or anything like that.
Hmm.
And by the way, Michael Briganti had very close ties with the local law enforcement officials.
Mm.
They were rewarded handsomely by him. In other words,
Yeah.
Read
So,
that. He
yeah.
had them in his pockets, which is another reason why he commanded Ronnie's grudging respect, because he was afraid of the grandfather,
Yeah.
that they would have him
Yeah. Yeah.
killed. And he says he has all the cops in his pocket. But then to the grandfather's face or the aunts and uncle's face, he was trying to be as innocent as a choir boy, saying, I love you guys. I love my family. No, I didn't do this.
Mm-hmm.
Even when the evidence was, mounting up higher.
Do you
than
think
the,
it's one of those things as well, since he's so calculated, that once he shot his father, there's this fear that, well, they'll all ID me, but if there's no witnesses, then there's no, then I'm sort of in the clear because they'll never be able to prove it.
I'm not sure he thought that far ahead, to be honest with you,
And yeah,
because
okay.
what he had done 2
Mhm.
weeks before. Now, well, if we go back to about a year before the murders,
Mhm.
he had guns in the house. Now, guns, and the father gave him the guns. He was already on parole, and
Oh
he
boy.
was a petty thief. He had stolen somebody's outboard motor from a boat, which he didn't have to do because he had his own boat, he had his own car,
Mhm.
and the family was giving him $400 to $500 in cash a week as an allowance back in 1974.
Good God.
I don't know about you, but I was lucky if I was making, $1 an hour, $1.50 an hour babysitting
Yeah, I
and getting a
know.
couple of dollars. So $400 or $500, and he was flashing that around,
Yeah.
to buy friends along with his drugs.
Mhm.
So again, he was at loggerheads with his father quite a bit. And the father would try and rein him in by pounding on him. Sometimes they actually had gotten into several fights. In fact, just a couple of weeks, there was one that was particularly nasty in the basement of the house. And the younger boys, Mark and John, had friends over, and they were sitting on the steps in the basement watching their father and brother go at it.
Mhm.
And the younger kids keenly felt the disruption, with having him in the house. And the dog, they had an old English sheepdog named Shaggy. And animals sense things. That dog did not like Ronnie, and he had actually bitten him. And Ronnie was threatening the dog, and Big Ronnie Sr. told Butch, if anything happens to that dog, the same thing is going to happen to you. If you break the dog's leg, I will break your leg. If the dog ends up in the creek, you're going to end up in the creek.
Wow.
But that dog did not like him. They had the dog tied outside
Mhm.
a good bit of the time.
Yeah.
But almost a year before the murders, and this is something I find incomprehensible. Ronnie took one of his guns, and he was trying to shoot his father at close range in the course of an argument. But the gun didn't fire. It locked. So after that,
Wow.
Big Ronnie Sr. figures, wow, I've got the devil on my back here. And that was the exact words that he used. And I just dodged a bullet, literally. So now I'm going to get religion in a big
Mhm.
way. So they start going up to see these monks in Canada, donating lots of money, having prayers
Mhm.
and masses said. You've got the holy statues on the front lawn.
But he went the other
Instead
way.
of,
Yeah.
yes, I don't think that stopped him from skimming
Yeah.
off the top
Yeah.
and cheating his father-in-law while their back is turned. But this is really like it's
Yeah.
the family that,
Yeah. Maybe I'll beat my wife a little bit less, or
yeah,
you
but
know. Yeah.
well, he didn't. Ronnie Senior, Big Ronnie, did not think anything of whatever skimming from
Yeah.
the father-in-law who was footing the bills.
Mm-hmm.
Ronnie Butch Jr. Basically, he had this low-level job that they just gave him to do something, and he took it. He took full advantage of that. He would brag to his friends, "Hey, listen, I don't have to show up for work if I don't want to."
Mm-hmm.
And they basically had him picking, nobody was going to have him be a car salesman. He wasn't fit to be a mechanic in the service area. I
Mm-hmm.
don't even think that they would let him change a flat tire. So he was more of a gopher. Hey, go and pick up
Mm-hmm.
parts.
Mm-hmm.
Go here, go there. Inexplicably, 2 or 3 weeks before the murders, somebody must have taken leave of their senses, and they deputize Butch and another low-level worker there to go and give them a bank deposit bag with $20,000 in it to take this cash to the bank.
Mm.
Who would do that? They know he's unreliable.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
under no illusions about his character or lack thereof.
Yeah.
So the predictable happens. Butch and the other guy go out to make the bank deposit. 3 hours later, they came back and said, "We were robbed. We were robbed. We were mugged." Now, the unbelievable part of this story is that anybody would have believed it. But apparently, I don't think Big Ronnie Sr. believed it for a minute. And then, so what is the next thing that Butch does? He goes out and starts spending like a drunken sailor. And what does he buy? He's getting drugs. He's taking his friends out for drinks. They're having a good time. He's buying new clothes. So the father sees this, and they're having arguments about this.
Oh,
So
boy.
that was one theory that was proposed as to why he might have killed the father, because the walls were closing in on him and it was only a matter of time. The father knew what he did.
Mm-hmm.
What I find amazing about this is that his grandfather, Michael Briganti, who was a really smart man and a very savvy businessman, that he wouldn't have seen through this. Now, first of all, why would you give this guy 2 nickels? Okay, you're never going to see it again, let alone $20,000. I mean, what is $20,000 50 years later? That's like you or me walking around with a couple of $100,000.
Yeah. That's
Gold bricks.
yeah, it's like the perfect storm, of events that
So he had,
unfolded.
he had a couple of girlfriends at the time, none of whom were named Geraldine. That was another hoax that grew up
Oh, boy.
out of all this. But so the night of the murders, late that afternoon and early evening, he had gone to see a friend who was a girl, and he was mixing up some heroin, etc. Then he supposedly went home, was watching TV and smoking pot in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
But there was never any explanation given, even during the confession, as to why he decides he's going upstairs. He comes up from the basement in the early morning hours, approximately 3 a.m. to 3:15, and decides to blow his whole family away. Now, the mother would have been the first one that got shot. And if you see this house, it's got a center hall. You've got the parents' bedroom, the master bedroom on one side, on the left side of the hall as you're going up the stairs. And then you have Allison's room on the right, and then the boys' room, Mark and John, they shared a room
Mm-hmm.
there. Okay, so they're right across the hall from one another. I don't know about you, but if you have anybody who has an animal, okay, or young children, you have a cat, you have a dog,
Mm-hmm.
you can hear those animals if they get up in the middle of the night to move.
You do.
You hear kids, you hear creaking
Mhm.
bed springs and things like this. So how is it that nobody, the other people didn't hear anything and attempt to move after those first shots? That was and remains one of the biggest mysteries.
Yeah. Right there. Why
I
didn't they hear it? Why didn't they
Well, the
wake
first
up?
thing that happens there, people were also theorizing that the father was not in bed, that he was shot out in the hall. That didn't happen. The father weighed about 280 pounds.
Mm.
So there's no way that Ronnie Jr. would have been able to pick his father up after blowing him, hitting him with a 35 caliber Marlin rifle
Mm-hmm.
without leaving a trail of blood. So it was 2 shots each for the parents. I think the mother, Louise, was always going to be collateral damage by virtue of the fact that she's lying in bed next to her husband.
Yeah.
So clearly when the first shot hit Big Ronnie, his body was going to recoil from that. And there was evidence that he, attempted to, I guess, lift himself up, using his elbow, but never really got the chance to make it before the second shot hit. Then there's 2 shots for the mother.
Mm-hmm.
And again, at close range, high-powered rifle with no silencer on the rifle, by the way. So those sounds, given the fact, even with the windows in the house closed because it was November, the fact that they're near the water. Now, the house directly on one side of them, nobody was not occupied.
Sound carries over water, though.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
So why didn't
Yeah.
but you hear things. If somebody's going
Mm-hmm.
down the street and you hear a car backfire,
Mm-hmm.
or a truck go
You
by, or
hear
you
it.
hear somebody, carousing in the street, you hear this, let alone a rifle shot.
Mm-hmm.
So he
Mm-hmm.
gets the mother and he got the first shot, it went through all of her organs, okay, from the back, the chest.
Yeah.
She probably, I'm guessing, somebody's getting shot right next to you, she would have reacted, but there was no time for her to move or get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
So again, she was face down, and Big Ronnie Sr. also collapsed on the bed. So he was, on his stomach as well. That doesn't explain why Allison and
Yeah.
Mark didn't react and move. John couldn't. I mean, he was, I wouldn't say immobile, but he was certainly hampered by his leg injury.
Yes. He wasn't going to be moving too quick. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, if you've got a 13-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 9-year-old
Mm-hmm.
who are literally only 20 feet away
Mm-hmm.
from these murders, those kids would have had to have panicked. They were never exposed to violence of that type. You would think that somebody would have gotten out of bed.
And nobody did.
Nobody did. And
Sound asleep.
Why were they all found on their stomach? And by the way, they were not drugged. There was an erroneous report at the time in the New York Times, of all places, that claimed, again, erroneously, that they had been drugged. They were not drugged. There were no sedatives or anything, nothing found in any of their systems. So how is it even, and let's just take this a little further.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine the unthinkable, and you've got a sibling who's running around crazy
Mm-hmm.
with a rifle. You've just heard shots in the middle of the night. You're going to get up and say, what's going on?
Or you're going to hide. because
Yeah,
you don't know where that, like, who's firing. You're gonna hide.
exactly. But say you go, or if you hide or you don't,
Mhm,
but then say Ronnie came over, for example, and told them,
mhm,
get back in bed, get face down. They might not be as inclined to do it in a state of panic because they are kids. And they might have been pleading with him, and there should have been ruffled, there should have been some signs of a struggle,
mhm,
etc. But
right.
none of that. And again, Allison is also shot. Allison and Dawn, the way they were shot, it was very close up and it was to the head. So that was pretty gruesome.
That's pretty usually when somebody does that, that's very personal, isn't it?
Yes, well,
Is is that considered very personal when somebody does that? Like,
one would think so, but again, we don't know. This guy did a lot of drugs,
right. So
Butch.
there's no rational.
What
Yeah.
what type
Yeah.
of um, resilience? What type? How much? Something that, look, I take NyQuil for a
Mhm.
cold, and I'm
Yeah.
out. I'm out
Right.
in 5 minutes.
Mm.
I mean, and that's what, 20% alcohol. But
Yeah.
I don't do drugs, and I'm not on any medication.
Mm.
But we don't know what kind of a tolerance
That he
Butch
built up. Yeah.
had built up. But he's got an enormous cocktail going
Mhm.
on within
Mhm.
him. And I don't think he was right in the head to begin with. That is not normal behavior.
Mhm.
And it was very interesting because one of the good books about this is by Thomas Stark, who was the judge
Mhm.
who presided over the trial. And he's got this book, which again is a great book. You can get it off Amazon. Um, and it's only about 170 pages, 166 pages. Half of the book, a good part of it, the first 60 pages, is all about the people versus Ronnie DeFeo Jr. Uh, this book, Horrific Homicides by Judge Thomas Stark, basically is about his most famous cases. So the lead off is, of course, part one, the antisocial son. I think that's a misnomer because to me, antisocial
Mhm.
is Holden Caulfield,
Mhm.
Catcher in the Rye. And antisocial is a friend of yours who goes to a party and sits in the corner
That's right. Not
all
one
night.
who's wanting and looking for attention.
This is well beyond antisocial.
Yeah.
Now,
Yes.
the way during the interrogation, by the way,
Mhm.
the way that, and even before that, the way Butch would talk about his siblings
Mhm.
was really, in a very, he was very, very critical of them. He said his two brothers were little pigs, that they didn't flush the toilet, in the bathroom that they, shared, and they'd leave toilet paper around. He called his sister Dawn a fat pig, and he didn't like the fact that she liked Motown music and black music.
Oh boy.
Um, the only one he didn't really have too much to say about Allison, the 13-year-old.
Right.
She seems to have escaped
The yeah,
his
the
his
yeah.
ire. The father
Right.
he didn't get along with. He was even now this is another little, it's just an aside, but it's sort of unbelievable. He was criticizing his mother's cooking. He said everything that she cooked tasted like bleep.
Yeah.
So there was hostility there. And yet they had family birthdays together, Christmases, Easter, holidays, and celebrated. And at 23, he was still living at home because, of course, he's got this, he was dependent upon the family
Mhm.
for his livelihood, such as it was. He wasn't, and he had all the toys.
Yeah.
what nobody can understand is that after he tried to kill his father, the year before,
Yeah.
they didn't take all of his guns away. They give him back the guns.
Yeah.
And he had violated parole also for stealing that outboard motor
And then
from
didn't
somebody's
end up
boat.
doing time for it, I guess, because it was just greasing the palms, right?
Yeah, well, who knows? And he was slick enough. That's what I would call him, is slick, to
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
let's see if I can fake the urine test to see
Mhm.
if I'm clean.
Yeah.
But beyond that,
Mhm.
I think he had these drug fueled hallucinogenic fantasies about spinning these, again, tales, very, very improbable, that would fall apart.
Well,
The first thing he did say, he was crying copious tears. This guy was crying rivers when the cops
mhm.
came in, and he said, I need protection. This is a mafia hit.
Mhm.
And he started naming people, this one fellow that he said was was the probable hit maker.
Mhm.
And when the cops the guy knew that the cops were looking for him, and he showed up voluntarily. They run into him, and he had a perfect alibi,
Mhm.
which was he was in Pennsylvania at the time. So that one fell apart. Then the
Mhm.
next thing was, the cops were also trying to theorize that Ronnie had, Butch, the family had money in the house. The mother's jewelry, the sister's jewelry, because of course, gold was only $25, $40 an ounce at the time.
Yeah.
So you all got your charm bracelet, your
Yeah.
gold. Then there was supposedly 100 or $200,000 in cash in a cash box
Mhm.
in the floor of the closet in the parents' bedroom,
Mhm.
life insurance policies. So that was floated as potential motives for the crime.
But nothing was taken, right?
Yeah, no, there were. No, actually, that's not true.
Oh, is that right?
Nobody ever found this so-called money.
Right.
However, what did come out when the Amityville homicide detectives managed to appeal to the New York RICO squad
Mhm.
over in Brooklyn, hey, we understand you've been bugging the Briganti Buick dealership. Can we listen to those tapes?
Mhm.
And after some persuasion and back and forth, they agreed, the RICO guys agreed to let the Amityville homicide detectives listen to the tapes, because
Mhm.
the Amityville people said, look, we don't care what investigation you have going against the Carl Briganti Buick
Yeah.
dealership.
Right.
We just want to see what they might have been saying about Ronnie, to see if
Mhm.
it can help us at all. And so one of the things that came out, and I'm always amazed at how people are blabbermouths. Doesn't matter. I mean, human nature is that people
Yeah.
blab. You remember John Gotti in the 80s,
Yeah.
the Dapper Don.
Mhm.
He had his social club, and he'd be talking away, just blabbing indiscriminately. And, he had to know he was bugged
Mhm.
by multiple law enforcement agencies, but they kept talking. Even today, you see people that we deal with in email or text messages. They
Right.
leave, Richard Nixon did it with his tapes, and then so people can't keep their mouths shut. They're very indiscreet.
Mhm.
Richard just said people love their big egos. No,
Mhm.
people are just, I think, careless. So in this case, the Amityville homicide detectives struck gold, because here, after the murders, you have Carl Briganti, not Carl Briganti, you have Michael
Mhm.
Briganti Sr.,
Mhm.
who's distraught, genuinely upset He loved his daughter, Louise.
Yeah.
He loved his grandchildren. And he's sitting there talking to his various associates. And interestingly, when Ronnie Jr. was first arrested, they hired a detective and an attorney for him. So outwardly, they and the DeFeo family, led by, Rocco, etc., closed ranks. And they were, they were outwardly supporting him, and they practiced the Italian omerta, which is we're not saying anything. But here they are sitting, blabbing, chattering away while being bugged.
Right.
It was clear that they knew they had no illusions. Ronnie was as guilty as original sin.
Yeah.
And Michael Briganti, I think he was, I'm not sure who he was talking to on these tapes, but the one associate says to him, "What are we going to do if the kid gets off, is acquitted? He knows a lot about our business." And Michael Briganti is distraught. He's going, "Oh, my poor daughter. She really had the devil on her back there. My poor grandchildren." Then they start to talk and say, "What happened to all the jewelry that we gave them?" And there's actually a funny line in there. He says, "I know those dicks," meaning that's the slang word for detective. "I know that they didn't flake the money. They didn't flake the stuff. What happened, to the money?" So they were under no illusions that Ronnie was guilty. Okay. And Ronnie did, when he confessed, he told them where to find the gun. He had thrown it he had taken a shower after the murders, changed out of his bloody clothes, put the clothes in a bag, goes out, and he's going around the neighborhood and he's disposing of the gun in the creek. He's disposing of his clothes down a sewer. So he told the cops exactly where to find everything.
Wow.
Nobody saw any of, this money or jewelry. And for some reason, at one point during the trial, this shows you how out of it Ronnie is, and how he starts complaining that the family sold his car and he didn't get why didn't he get the $3,500 for the car? Duh.
Because he didn't pay for it.
Yeah. And supposedly, while he was in lockup, before he was actually convicted and sent to prison, he was blabbing away to his cellmates and claiming that he took this 100,000 or 200,000, whatever it was 6 figures, and both numbers have been bandied about, and buried it in a park somewhere. Well, that's never been found. So we don't know if that part is true. Okay, but this he was a braggadocio. He couldn't help himself. And by the way, when he did go to prison, eventually, he was still getting all of his drugs. He was first online to get his oxy. So, and again, the one aunt, his, paternal aunt on the DeFeo side, went to visit him regularly. And he would lie up and down the wall. "No, I love my family. I didn't kill them." But he thought nothing of throwing any, these wild theories out, which came to naught.
This is after he confessed. I mean, he's in jail. So,
Yeah.
based on evidence, and he switched his story a lot. I'm just gonna pop into the obscure and paranormal because I know there's people out there who want, who are gonna ask us. Sometimes, if there's something in the house, I think the dog's a dead giveaway. If something attached to Ronnie, for example, the dog would react to Ron, and just, knowing that there was something there attached to him, or pulling the strings, whatever you want to call it. And sometimes people with anger issues, B, addictions, tend to be an enticing target because they're easier to manipulate. Do
Yes.
you think, knowing what you know now about the entire history of the house and everything, moving forward, do you think that this could have been a probable case or
Yes,
cause?
I think it's a definite possibility
Yeah.
because I agree with you. You do have, when you have a person who is a drug addict, a person who's, probably he's a pathological liar at the
Mhm.
very least.
Mhm.
His lies are easily seen through. He's greedy. I mean, the whole thing with Amityville, when you start with the DeFeo family, okay, there's greed that runs through the whole thing.
Mm.
The father, Big Ronnie, feels, oh, I've got to get over on my father-in-law. Butch Jr. would say, I don't have to show up for work, or I can come in whenever I please.
The
And
cycle
they're not
just
going to fire me.
continues.
So, yes, but
So the
again,
two men were probably both being manipulated.
yes. But at the same time, you've got this strong religious streak that goes through them. For example, Michael Briganti Sr. gets up on the in the courtroom during the trial, and he's on the witness stand, and he makes a point. He is not prompted. He makes a point of saying, I am a practicing Catholic. I go to confession and I take communion at least once a month. That was that was a very big deal. So you've got this duality there, and yet, they're skimming off the top. And he was, the Briganti and DeFeo families were close knit.
Mhm.
Okay, those kids went to Catholic school. And
Yeah.
Ronnie Jr., Butch, now this shows how screwed up his morals, what little he possessed, and ethics were. He actually comes out and he makes a statement saying, yeah, he would beat so and so up, and he would threaten even his friends, as well, as get into it with the father. And he says, but he said to somebody, but I never hit a sister, meaning the nuns. Okay, and those nuns in those days. Now, this is interesting because
They
in
were
Amityville,
tough.
no, yes, they were tough. It was the Sisters of Saint Dominic. I was taught by them.
Right.
They had Catholic schools in the Brooklyn, Queens diocese out on the island, and they're right near the mother house. Now, you go back to what is attached to the house.
Yes.
Here is something, and for a long time, the Amityville Historical Society tried to deny this. But if you go back to 1653, when the Dutch were in New York, there was a massacre of 120 Native Americans on the border of what is East Massapequa and Amityville, just about 1.5 to 2 miles from Ocean Avenue.
Wow.
So 120 bodies are there, and they had to disperse them. Okay, so you did have some of them buried, and over the years, at the time when I first began my research, before the story with the Lutzes blew up, what you had was a couple of newspaper articles going back. This is the local newspapers, the Brooklyn Daily Eagle, which was huge in the day.
Yeah.
The Rockville Center local newspaper. And some of these were little gossip columns, like Michelle DeRochers had a tea party and she invited Laura DiDio, and they had this is what was served. So in these little gossip columns, they talked about how they were digging a root cellar at 112 Ocean Avenue when they came upon the bodies of what they presumed to be Native Americans.
Oh boy.
4 bodies.
Wow.
Now, and there were 2 or 3 articles. At least one was 1895, another is 10 years later, 1905. And those articles, when I went back to photocopy them, because we didn't have mobile phones in those days where we could
Right.
just take things, and the photocopier, well, I went back 2 weeks later, they had disappeared. And for decades, the Amityville Historical Society denied the reports. But I have all of the old maps, the original maps, where you could see this. So yes, Native Americans were all over there. Now, in addition to that massacre that happened with those bodies being reburied, and here's another thing that goes to the Catholic Church. You had the Amityville Mother House for the nuns, which is this huge sprawling estate. By the way, these Sisters of St. Dominic were brilliant investors in terms of real estate. They had big estates out in the Hamptons that they've since sold off. But the Mother House, where they have it, and they buried a lot of the nuns there, that used to be, prior to them getting there, a cemetery. You had a cemetery for Native Americans. And some of those graves were moved.
Oh boy.
And you still have, but it wasn't, we're not talking the 2M baby scandal in Ireland.
Yeah.
But there were the Montosket or Montauk Indians, the Shinnecock, and the Shinnecock Nation still is right out there nearby. You've got the Massapequans. You've got some of the Iroquois Nation. I always thought the Iroquois were just confined to upstate New York, but apparently they were out there. So there was a lot of activity. And if you're a Native American at the time, where do you go? You're going to stay right by the water because it's a source of food with fish. It's a source of transportation. It's a source, and you're going to be buried there as well. Yeah. Where I come from, which was Queens, but Queens is part of Long Island, and I was on the North Shore. Amityville is the South Shore. We had the Matinecock Native Americans, and when they started developing my town along the shoreline, my town was a peninsula, of course they uncovered big treasure troves of Native American villages, pottery, all sorts of things. So yes, you did have all of that activity there. You did have that one massacre that had occurred where the bodies were redistributed and pretty close to the Amityville house. So to your original question, you have somebody like Butch
And his
who's
father.
off to begin with, whether or not people want to say a particular diagnosis, whatever. He's not normal. Okay. And certainly he never expressed any remorse. I don't think that his crocodile tears counted. So yes, he would have been, you have somebody who's not great intelligence. They're on drugs, alcohol, heavy substance abuse. He's driven by greed, which is one of the 7 capital sins.
Yeah. And then you have his father the same. I mean, to randomly push your wife down the stairs sounds almost like an act of something else, maybe pulling the strings for a moment, unless they had words before. Because, I mean, you don't live in the house, you don't know. Maybe there was some angst going on from the night before, but the thing is to have that kind of a vicious act, to push somebody down the stairs like that, it's sort of like, wow, that's the kind of activity that happens if there's something in the space, unless you're just a real asshole.
I know. Well, no, I mean, I think he
Or a
was
bit
sort
of
of like
both.
an Archie Bunker on steroids. I don't think she wasn't walking around with, black eyes and her teeth knocked out. And there is evidence that in that last year, after Butch's failed assassination attempt,
Mhm.
that Big Ronnie gets religion and the whole family is going up to Canada to the monastery.
That's
And
crazy.
there are pictures of them. And by the way, Louise Briganti DeFeo, people loved her. She was
Mhm.
she was a nice person.
Mhm.
The other kids were
Mhm. Just you
certainly well liked.
just the two oldest, essentially, you know, had more time with mom and dad or with dad. So, yeah, it is very interesting. There's a lot of mystery that surrounds all of that, and, you know, closure, I don't think there's ever been. Everybody has flocked to that house, and everything that came afterwards just added to the tragedy. So many people have claimed through the years, just from reading, researchers who have gone up there and say, no, the family was still there, in spirit and stuck and things like that. It's sad that even the memory can't be left in peace.
Well, I think one of the nastiest things
Mhm.
that Butch did was try and implicate his sister Dawn in
Mm,
the murders and say she killed his siblings,
yeah,
and so he killed her for doing that.
yeah.
He was only copping to the fact over the years that he killed his father, but he certainly never expressed any remorse, nor
Mhm.
did, even at the end of all this, the detectives, the prosecutors, could not come up with a clear-cut motive. The other thing is, in the best book about the trial
Mhm.
is High Hopes, the Amityville Murders, which was written by Gerard Sullivan,
Mhm.
who was the DA, who was very affected by this. He was a fairly young man of about 40, and he had teenage daughters of his own.
Mhm.
He co-wrote the book with Harvey Aronson, who was a Pulitzer Prize winning reporter and editor.
Mhm.
Harvey is still alive, for New York Newsday.
Mhm. Yeah.
Neither of them believes in any of the supernatural
Right.
stuff there, but the last words in this book were Gerard Sullivan saying, I still think about the DeFeo family, especially the children, and all of these unanswered questions.
Mhm.
Why is it that nobody woke up?
Mhm.
Why is it that nobody in the neighborhood heard any shots?
That's a big one. I mean, you don't believe in the supernatural, but you have to admit that's very, very unusual. Even the dog didn't react.
No, the dog did react.
Well, the dog did react.
The
Okay.
dog was tied outside. And actually what happened to Shaggy was he was barking for
So he knew. Yeah.
nonstop for
Yeah.
15 to 20 minutes. And there was a teenager who lived down two doors away.
Yes. Okay. I remember the story
His
now.
name was
Yeah.
John Nemeth. His
Yeah.
name is John Nemeth.
Yeah.
And he heard the dog barking incessantly. So the dog knew
The dog heard.
that something was going on. And that dog did not like Ronnie.
No.
So do I think something got into Ronnie? Yeah. And something definitely happened there. And I think it can attach. If you read Stephen King's novel, The Shining,
Yeah.
the Amityville situation reminds me of that, in that you can have things lay dormant for a while, but then something triggers it.
Yeah.
Now, I had a conversation, I've spoken to a couple of the former owners
Yes.
and the more recent former owners. Okay. I was involved in something and I called them up to say, hey, could we get access to the house and come in? We'd be respectful, etc. And the people were very, very nice and cordial to me. And when I happened to mention we would like what would be involved, that we wanted to bring, Danny Lutz in there. And by the way, up until this point, these former owners were debunking the fact that there was anything supernatural. They said it's just a tired old ghost story to make money, just like the New York Times said. And so they were very, very skeptical. But all of a sudden, when I mentioned Danny Lutz's name, this person, it was like flipping a light switch. All of a sudden, this very sweet person starts cursing a blue streak and says, Danny Lutz, that little bleep, 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 it was him and George. I would never let them in here. They're the ones who brought the darkness into this house. And if they came back in, they could do that. Now, just 30 seconds before, this person had been saying to me, there's nothing to it, nothing supernatural. But now all of a sudden,
there's a darkness.
And it was Danny Lutz and George brought it in. Now, whatever anybody thinks of Danny Lutz, the 55, 56-year-old man today, the fact of the matter is he was an innocent 9-year-old boy.
Yeah, as a kid. Yeah.
So, but George, I think anybody who's looked at the Amityville cases for whatever reason does think that George and his particular energy seemed to be a lightning rod to attract whatever happened. And certainly George himself, again, irrespective of what anybody thinks, whether you fall on the side of this man concocted this master scheme to make money, or whether he's cracked, or whether you believe it wholeheartedly, he was never able to shake Amityville. It ended up really dominating his life.
Right.
In one way or another. He was involved in so many lawsuits. He was determined to try and convince people that this happened. And I think in the end, it really killed him. Because he had that massive heart attack.
It destroyed two families, essentially.
Yes.
And the new owners who think, well, there's nothing here, clearly are being affected. I mean, these things are known for going after the weakest link. And usually that's either a young child, or that's somebody with the temper or with the addiction, somebody that's easy to manipulate, that won't notice what's going on.
Yeah. Now, Big Ronnie Sr.,
yeah,
we see he tries to get religion, and by having masses said, by donating money to this brother,
so
these
eliminate
brothers,
the problem.
Monks. Well, to try and what he's trying to do is, I guess, cloak himself in divine protection.
He's buying protection, and he's aggravating with all the prayers and everything else. He's aggravating what's there, most likely. So how do you get rid of that problem?
I don't think he thought of it that deeply.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying that what's at hand, the puppet master. How do you get rid of the problem that's annoying the crap out of you? As you get the other problem to solve it for you.
They could never get a handle on
Mm.
Ronnie Jr.,
Yeah.
Butch. They
Yeah.
kept him close, but not close enough. What your 23-year-old son
Yeah.
has tried to shoot you at close range and you give him back his guns?
Yeah.
Why not check him into rehab?
No,
But they
exactly.
knew
Yeah.
something was off with him because for a Catholic Italian family
Mhm.
back in the 60s
Mhm. Yeah.
to send their 9 or 10-year-old son off, they didn't send him away, but
No.
he went to see a psychiatrist.
Mhm.
That was very unusual for the time.
It is, especially with a prominent family or, business owners, they wanna keep their family affairs very private. They don't want to attract attention to themselves, especially if you're doing something shady, so to speak. You want even less amount of attention brought to you, right? So,
I'm not sure that's the way Big Ronnie and Butch thought. They didn't
yeah,
think anything of mixing it up, having loud fights on, as I said, and making
yeah.
a spectacle of themselves.
No, I
In
mean,
what
with
was,
bringing in a professional such as a psychiatrist, it would
yes,
not look good because somebody from the outside, taking a chance that your dysfunctional child is going to say something he's not supposed to say, to an outsider.
but
So that was a
certainly,
really big deal.
certainly Butch I don't think he was really practicing as a Catholic, but when you're
Yeah.
brought up there
Yeah.
in the church like
Yeah.
that, as he said,
Mhm.
whatever code of honor,
Yeah.
however skewed it was, he said, I never hit a sister, as though that gets him a gold star. I never
Yeah.
hit a nun. Um,
Yeah.
Interesting. And he nominally, I mean, they did have masses said in the house.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
was it was not common, but it was not, I mean, I know that some of my relatives,
Yeah.
had the priest come and say mass in the house,
Yeah.
just to have the mass said in the house.
So if you've got something a bit on the malevolent side in the house and there's mass going on in your space, it's going to peeve you off even more. It might
Yes.
amp things up at that point.
Yes. And I
Yeah.
think certainly between father and son,
Yeah.
there was that dynamic
Yeah.
going on. Although I think Big Ronnie, even though he was doing whatever his secular activities were,
Mhm.
he was not actively in the mob or the mafia. I think he was just skimming off
Yes.
the father-in-law.
Yes.
Ironically, the one person in the family on his side, who on the DeFeo side, who was a capo regime,
Mhm.
that guy, it was like Casino with the Robert De Niro character who was
Yeah.
the accountant.
Mhm.
Everybody else dies around him. Well, that one guy who was the capo, he ended up retiring from the mafia and dying in his late 80s peacefully at home. Against what are the odds of
Yeah.
that happening with
Yeah.
murder and mayhem all around you and you being in the thick of it, but
Yeah. Yeah.
that's that's what happened.
Yeah.
And
So, Ronald DeFeo, did he keep changing his story to the end? Like, when did he passed away, what year?
2000 March 12th, 2021.
Wow.
A lot of people wonder what happened. Was he buried with the family in St. Charles Cemetery?
Yeah, and how did he die?
That
Do
He
we
had been sick for a while. If you see
Oh,
the pictures of him when he was young, he was actually pretty hefty.
you're right.
And over the years, he got thinner and
Did
thinner.
Yeah.
So there was the thought that he might have had cancer.
Mhm.
There was no cause of death that was released.
Wow.
I believe he was cremated and that his ashes were given to members of his extended family because, of
Mhm.
course, his nuclear family was all gone.
Right.
Uh, I, I don't believe he is buried. His ashes are buried with the family in St. Charles Cemetery. No, they wouldn't allow that to happen. As it is, people are, you have people who are so interested in this story that they make pilgrimages to the grave and, leave little tokens on the grave. So I don't think
Yeah.
the folks who run the cemetery would want to
No.
invite.
More attention or vandalism.
Yeah, and I think it was just more or less also the thought, you've got a convicted murderer there.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
And I mean, it's sort of like a blow to the family's reputation also, putting them together in the end.
yeah.
Some
One
may
thing I
think.
will say about Ronnie, he was consistent
Mhm.
throughout his life. He kept changing his story, as you noted,
Mhm.
and he actually had, what did he have? Nothing but time on his hands. So
Mhm.
he would, when the reporters, like my colleague Marvin Scott, wrote to him in jail, and he
Mhm.
got a letter back from him,
Hmm.
no grammar, no spelling, to speak of.
Yeah.
But Ronnie would end up in jail and he's reading all these accounts about himself and all these theories. So one of the theories was there must have been an accomplice. So there must have been two. How could one person
Yeah.
commit all those murders? And Ronnie would read that and he would turn it back on. So to the reporters. So they would come to interview him at the prison, and he'd say, how could I have murdered all those people? He would take the theories that he read in the paper, debunking that there was a lone
Yes. Yes.
gunman, if you
Well,
will.
realistically, if everybody's sacked out, you got all the time in the world, right? I mean, he's
I'll
roaming
tell
around
you,
the house. There's nothing going on. Who's there to
Ed and,
stop you?
Ed and Lorraine Warren always said to me that she thought that the family was in a demonic fugue state.
I've heard that.
You know, I can't say. I wasn't there. I mean, wouldn't we all like to
Mhm.
have, be in a time, go back in time and be there for that 15 or 20 minutes
Mhm.
that it took him to blow the whole family away to actually get empirical evidence as to what happened. It's like solving the mystery. What did it look like when the Titanic was going down?
Yeah.
What did it look like on Custer's last stand? What
Mhm.
really happened? Any of these
Yes.
mysteries throughout
Mhm.
history. I mean, that one though confounded
Mhm.
even the prosecutors, the district attorney, and the detectives. How did this happen? Why were they all found
Mhm.
face down?
That's a big one.
How did nobody hear the shots?
Mhm.
But the dog knew. The dog knew he was a bad
Mhm.
actor. I mean, animals can sense things.
Mhm.
Horses, for example, can hear a person's heartbeat from 4.5 to 5 feet away.
Amazing.
How is it that dogs can sense, some dogs
Mhm.
can sense when somebody's going to have an epileptic seizure? How is it
Mhm.
that, some dogs and cats? There was that famous
Mhm.
cat in the nursing home here in Rhode Island
Mhm.
that would go into a
Yeah.
person's room about a half an hour before they would die. I mean, the cat
Mhm.
itself has since passed away,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
so there are those things,
Mhm.
and this is inexplicable, but I do think that whether or not you want to call it supernatural, whether or not you want to say there's something in the laws of physics and chemistry,
Mhm.
Butch attracted that energy and it took somebody who was off and
Mhm.
who was evil. Let's say it, he was evil, you know,
Mhm. Yeah.
and he attracted that energy and fed into it. That was the same theme that, again, that you had in The Shining,
Mhm.
where in that hotel,
Mhm.
there was something evil.
Yeah.
And the way Stephen King described it, which I think is pretty spot on and applicable here, is that it's like a battery, and certain people can charge it. And it saw the little boy Danny, and it saw the other fellow, the cook, who was psychic,
Yeah.
and they could sense those things. And why is it that certain people
hmm
uh,
Um,
were attracted?
well, I mean, I can tell you some of the people that I've worked with in the last couple of decades where, in some instances, when where let's say the wife was under attack by something unseen, the husband lay in bed right beside her in the deepest sleep, like she couldn't, she could not wake her husband up. I've worked 3 different instances like that, 3 cases like that, and I don't like to call them cases, but, working with families in the same scenario. And the husband's like goes, "I heard nothing. I was in a sound sleep, and I didn't even know until the next morning that she'd been under attack." She goes, "I tried everything to wake him up. Shook him and shook him and shook him, and it never happened." So when I hear something like this, I'm thinking it's probable if they're in a situation where there's something otherworldly, um, that's manifested itself or that has control over the energy that is Ronald DeFeo, for example. And everybody's in this sound sleep. And it's interesting to me how he called everybody, he called like pigs. They're pigs. They're pigs. And then when the Lutzes come in, what's manifested? A pig.
Well, actually, that's also
A made up
not
thing?
entirely true. You're talking
Okay.
about Jody. Okay, so
Jody the pig.
you've
Yeah.
you've
The
got little.
manifestation of. Yeah.
Okay, but Jody wasn't just a pig. I have all my original notes and
Yeah.
tapes and things.
Yeah.
And Melissa, who's 5 years old, she had
Yeah.
not yet reached generally accepted age
Yeah.
of reason, which is 7. So she's
Right.
5.
Yeah.
And she's drawing pictures of Jody.
Yeah.
What George Lutz told me, he said, well, Jody didn't just happen to be a pig. Jody could be anything it wanted to be. So sort of
Right.
like, could just shift.
hmm Yeah.
And he also said that when they left New York and flew to San Diego to
hmm
live out there, that little Melissa is telling them,
hmm
oh, look, Jody's on the wing. Well, that's like watching that episode of Bewitched where Samantha is on, or her mother is on the wing of the plane.
hmm
I talked to Lorraine Warren about Jody. I said, what do you think about the Jody thing? I said, because frankly, to me, this smacks of an imaginary friend. You've got a
hmm
5-year-old.
Yeah.
And Lorraine said to me, I agree with you.
hmm
So the Jody as the demon pig thing
Yeah.
took off because the other next door neighbors had a cat
Yeah.
and they claimed that those red eyes that George
Cream that he
saw
saw.
on the
Yeah.
second floor window staring in at him, that was Jody.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And then there were the things where they said that Kathy looked in the mirror and she saw the face of an old hag instead of her own 29-year-old face.
Yeah.
Then she and George supposedly levitated off their beds
Yeah.
last night.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Kathy came from a very religious family. George was not Catholic.
hmm
He was a sort of lackadaisical, fallen away Methodist.
There was some talk at some point about him being MK Ultra. So being like really
I will say he was always, there was a lot of tension around him.
Yeah.
He reminded me of a tensile wire where he could snap at any time. It was like,
Yeah.
being around somebody, you have to tiptoe around them.
hmm
Ed and Lorraine Warren found that as well.
Yeah.
Now and he was also a control freak.
hmm
that was him. But when he got into that house, it was certainly amped up.
Mhm.
Now, even if one ascribes to the theory
Mhm.
that George was evil, that he made this all up just as a money-making scheme, et
Mhm.
cetera, et cetera, what we do know, he always did try and control the narrative,
Mhm.
which wasn't going to happen when that
Right.
story exploded.
Yeah.
So, yes, the marching band music in the middle of the night, is there truth to that? That is one of the things that George said. Now, nobody was there to witness that. He also told me that doors were ripped off their hinges. But when I went in there with Channel 5, we saw no evidence that doors had been ripped off the hinges, that there had been any repair work.
Mhm.
He also characterized, he said there was, this is his words, not mine, poltergeist puke, green slime in the boathouse.
Mm.
We didn't see that. And then there was the business with all the flies. Now, it's possible at this time of year, we have those Asian beetles that look like
Mhm.
ladybugs, but aren't
Yeah.
ladybugs, that are getting into people's houses or outside, getting under the eaves. So,
Mm.
but we didn't see any
But the
collection of
priest
flies.
also validated that he
Yes,
had an experience in the house. Is that correct?
yes. In fact, I had met Father Ralph, aka Ray Pecoraro, at the Lutzes house.
Yeah.
And he was a very quiet guy, and he was on one show in shadow, and then that was it. The Catholic Church shut that down. The diocese didn't want him talking about that.
Oh boy.
But when I asked him directly, I said, is it really true that when you went into the house to bless the house, that you heard a disembodied voice telling you get out, and that you were punched or smacked in the face? And he says, yes, that did happen.
Wow.
Now, again, going back to what you're saying about antagonizing things, and we saw the movie The Exorcist, which is based on a true story about a 13-year-old boy, not a 12-year-old girl, as was depicted in the movie with Linda Blair
Mhm.
being Reagan.
Yeah.
And they don't know what, and seemingly that was just random, that
Mhm.
she was possessed. But certainly Max von Sydow, who played the lead exorcist there,
Mhm.
the demon knew he was coming
Yeah.
to Marin, and it was screaming before he even got into the house, Marin, Marin.
Mhm.
So yeah, they can who knows why they attach
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
certain people,
Mhm.
or what triggers it. But even the disbeliever, even the former owner of
Mhm.
the Amityville house, you talk about trigger. This person, when I mentioned Danny Lutz, she had been basically debunking the notion there's nothing here, it's a tired old ghost story,
Mm.
etc.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned Danny's name, and it was like saying Niagara Falls. And I felt like I was talking to, somebody who, it was like a different person.
Yeah.
Went from sweet, very normal, very, cordial, to
Yeah. And then it
all
just
of a sudden crazy.
So, I mean, did you ever get in contact with any remaining family members, like the aunt who used to go see Ron DeFeo in jail? Like, did she ever get anything?
At the time, I had talked to Michael Briganti again. At the time, going back
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
70s, and a few of them. Now, the aunt that you're speaking of is still alive, but
Yeah.
very elderly. So out of respect, you don't want to
No.
bother those
No.
people. I talked
I
to,
meant even at the time,
yes, no, at the time
Yeah.
I talked to Michael Briganti, who again was genuinely torn up. His
Yeah.
son, obviously he's passed, but his son who was very different from the rest of them. He was a Vietnam vet,
Yeah.
etc. Very calm, very law-abiding person. You know, they don't like to talk about it. And some of them are up here in New England, the extended
Yeah, it's
family.
hard. It's a stigma. Like it's that stigma on your family name, on your and your family history. It gets very, very difficult because you carry that around. Over time, people tend to forget. But for some reason, when it comes to this house and this family, the Lutzes and the DeFeos will always sort of be tied together in history because of one location, and both having tragedy with bad endings. The Lutzes obviously not murdered, but Kathy and George both died, and the boys. I mean, they I think it really stayed with them. So there's
It
a
did.
heaviness on both ends.
And the interesting thing about Danny, okay, is
Yeah.
he loathed George. If you take a look at the Amityville Horror documentary from 2012,
Yeah.
where I was one of the producers,
Yes.
and I was the interviewer on that as well. Eric Walter, who was the director, the executive producer, and the writer, did a masterful job. It's more like Alfred Hitchcock Presents
Yeah.
in terms of a psychological profile of Danny.
Mhm.
What happened was Danny couldn't stand George. He runs away from home out there in Arizona when he's 16, makes his way back to New York, and he's working as a UPS driver. Big coincidence. Guess what his route was? It was in my hometown of College Point. What are the chances?
Yeah.
Danny put that all behind him. He locked those experiences away in a closet or in a room in his mind. It wasn't until they had the movie, the remake, when he was, offered some money for the use of his name, and he starts doing the Amityville Horror. People want to interview him because he didn't even tell his wife at the time and his kids. He had 2 kids. He has 2 kids that he was involved in Amityville. He kept that to himself.
I don't. We're social media friends. I thought, oh God, I'd love to approach him, but you're an adult now. You have a different life. I didn't figure he'd want to.
No, he's amenable. He'll talk, I guess, on certain things. You'd have to ask him depending upon how he's feeling. But
Yeah.
the way his wife found out that he was involved with the Amityville Horror was when she went to the video store. We don't have video stores anymore, like Blockbuster.
Back in the day, yeah.
Yeah, back in the day.
Yeah.
And she sees this thing about the Lutz family. She's going to rent this video. And then she sees the DeFeo family and the Lutz family. And she comes home and says, is this you? And he said, yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow. So he kept this on the down low.
Right.
But all of a sudden, when he got involved in these various projects and things, and it all comes out again, I mean, Danny is very scary, and he's very compelling in that it's a very cogent, powerful testimonial. I had a friend who was watching my Amityville Horror, and she turned it off after 10 minutes because she said she was creeped out by Danny. Even the psychiatrist, let me tell you, Danny was running rings around the psychiatrist. Okay. And the one psychiatrist turned around and said that they believed that they didn't know if Danny was telling the truth about all of this, but they were convinced that Danny believed what he was saying happened.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was interviewing him and we were being taped. I was driving the SUV on the Long Island Expressway and interviewing Danny for the Amityville Horror. And we're sitting there and I said, well, Danny, what is it, you take away from all of this? How is it that you feel? And he said to me, he was in tears. He says, I just want people to believe me.
Yeah.
And there are some things that he remembers very vividly, like he and Christopher both say they saw this spectral figure come into their room that one night. Now, they had their bedroom. They were sharing the bedroom that was Ronnie DeFeo's bedroom.
Yeah, right
And
there.
they opened the closet because there were a lot of things left in that house. They opened the closet and there were no guns, but they had all the ammunition, the bullet casings. And here's two little kids, 7 and 9, who are playing with this. And if you believe in,
Yeah, energy transferring over. Yeah.
And you're living with these things, I wouldn't have wanted to live with those things.
No.
The bed frames.
They had everything. Right? Everything was left there.
Well, not only that, but Kathy comes in because you figure after it was no longer a murder scene, neither family wanted to go in there and do a wholesale clean out.
No.
A lot of the portraits, the oil paintings that Michael Briganti had commissioned of the family, the granddaughters, his daughter, even Ronnie Sr. and, Butch, they're posing and smiling together in a picture. That's about all they took. Yeah. The Lutzes ended up
with everything.
Buying, excuse me. Jim, excuse me.
Yeah,
thank you. Buying a lot of that furniture, but Kathy comes in, and Kathy was a very clean person. She was not OCD, as some people have suggested about being a cleaning freak.
Yeah, right.
But she was just, she was very clean. And she's still scraping. She ends up a year later, and she's scraping blood, bone fragments.
Terrible.
And other matter off the walls. Because don't forget, the cops leave. They collected their evidence. Who's cleaning that up? They're not. A lot of those things were left behind. Yeah, and when you're handling that,
yeah,
that can attach itself. And that was pretty raw with them moving in just, a year, 13 months after the killings.
Pretty much. Okay, one last question. Did any other residents in the neighborhood experience paranormal activity that you know of?
No, not that I know of. However, I will tell you, I personally witnessed other residents in the neighborhood behaving in a very odd manner. The night we had the seance, what I called the psychic slumber party, March 6th, 1976, Ed Warren finally called a halt to everything because you had 21 people in the house and
ridiculous.
It was like a party, so the house was never going to settle down. So it was probably about 4:30 in the morning. Channel 5, we had 3-man crews at that point. We're packing up to go, and there's like a shared driveway next door. And we see the next door neighbors coming home from a party, husband and wife. And the wife is feeling no pain. She's 3 sheets to the wind. They look at us on the side lawn, and next thing you know, they go into the house. 5 minutes later, here comes the Amityville police pulling up, wanting to know who we were. Now, Marvin Scott is there. The cops should have recognized Marvin. Okay. Marvin, of all things, did not have his press credentials with him. And here's me. I'm just the lowly news assistant, news writer, producer for the evening. I did have my press credentials. We explained to the police, yes, we had permission from, the Lutzes to be there. Our camera crew is packing up all the gear, 3-man crew. And apparently the next door neighbor had complained because it was like on their property, 6 inches. There was no fence there. While we're talking to to the Amityville police, who then start to relax when they realize we're professionals and we're not, we are allowed to be there. They start saying, this thing is a real pain in the butt. We have people driving up here coming down in bus loads, tourist things, and the cop is saying we've had to put extra details on it, and this is really disrupting the neighborhood, and this is all BS. All of a sudden, here comes the next door neighbor out, and you cannot make this stuff up. The wife, she's running up and down the side of her house, 20 feet from us, yelling, "Yoo-hoo, Ronnie! You want to come out and play guns? Yoo-hoo, Ronnie!" And she's in her nightgown. drunk as a skunk. At this point, and I said to the cops, I said, okay, talk about possession. I said, you're worried about us, and this woman is putting on a show. Mm-hmm. And the husband had to come out, grab her, and bring her in the house. So
yeah.
you can't make this, you cannot make this stuff up.
No.
You can't make this stuff up.
It's like a supernatural Stepford Wives on an up elevated scale.
It was. And let me tell you, Marvin Scott and Mike Linder, who was the WNEW radio reporter, WNEW TV and radio, they're both Scorpios. They were both skeptics. But they were there, and I was sitting in between them during the seance. And Marvin leans over and whispers to me at one point, "Hey, I just felt a chill." Mm-hmm. 5 minutes later, Mike Linder leans over and he goes, "Hey, I just felt a chill." Mm-hmm. Now, when Marvin tells the story to this day, he says, "Well, I felt a little chill, but it was nothing.
No big deal." Yeah.
But I didn't feel anything. Mike Linder went upstairs. I think he went to Ronnie DeFeo's room to sleep there. Everybody left. He woke up about 8 or 9 o'clock the next morning on a Sunday morning, and he's alone in the house.
Yeah.
So
there he is.
What can you say? But certain people, some of the psychics claimed they were ill, but Marvin and Mike did feel a chill. Our cameraman, very fit guy of about 40, and that camera equipment back in the day was heavy. You had to be in shape to run around on the streets of New York. He had severe heart palpitations. That was not faked. He got to the top of that stairs at that one place where Lorraine felt ill, where there seemed to be something, because it was the second floor where they were, most of them, except for Dawn, were hurting. And people were having a reaction. And certainly our cameraman, Steve, a year and almost a year and a half later, he hadn't seen the house. He also had a psychic flash, because when we originally got there about 6 o'clock at night, and he had his light meter and he's walking up the stairs, he got halfway up that first stairway, and he turned around and he said to me, "Hey, there's a room it's the second door, it's the second door on the left." And he says, "One wall is filled with mirrors." And he looked at me and he got this strange look on his face and he said, "I don't know how I knew that." He proceeds to go the next 5-10 steps to get to the landing, and all of a sudden he turns around and I watch the blood drain out of his face, and he doubles over, clutching his chest. And he was in the other two members of the film crew rushed up to him, bring him down, sit him on the bottom step, and he had broken out into a cold sweat.
Yeah.
I also had the situation with my dog when I went in 2 weeks later on a Saturday by myself, because I saw all these people being affected and I never felt a thing. But when I went in with my dog, the dog reacted. There was something there and he had an extreme reaction. He did not move. His eyes were fixed. The hackles were up on his back. His ears were pinned back, and he had his teeth bared. He was growling, and he was looking at a point there And I never saw him act that way prior to that. I never saw him act that way again. So animals sense things. So I think there was something there, and I think it was opportunistic in who it would affect.
Yeah.
Much the same way you can have a person who has an allergy to strawberries or peanuts.
Yeah, sure.
And how do you know that you're sensitive to something? Well, the answer is you don't until it happens and you have a reaction.
And we are going to stop it right there. It was excellent. You guys will have to go check out the archives because there's a lot of our archives with Laura where she talks specifically about the house, the Lutzes, and incorporates the DeFeo. You know, this was, I hated that we had to get started 15, 20 minutes late, but, you know, we definitely have made up that time. And
Yeah, this is a short conversation as far as you and I are concerned.
yeah, well, I mean, we've done okay. We're
Yeah.
10 minutes before the 2 hours. Usually I cut in at about 90,
I know.
or so. But as always, it's always such a pleasure, you know, when you're on the show, always informative, always loaded with information, entertaining, and just, you know, people love it. And everybody's already chiming in, and yes, you're all welcome. I know Laura's wonderful.
Thank you for listening, everybody. And you know, good questions. I mean, there are still this same handful of questions that come up that have been unanswered.
Yeah, and may always be, because I don't think there's anybody there to answer them anymore, you know. Well, everybody, thank you all for tuning in. Of course, the chat room, you guys are always incredible. So thank you. Thank you for your comments and your questions. Okay, Monday night, guys, 10 p.m. Eastern is the second segment of Two Real Cryptid Legends with Daryl Denton and Ron Moorhead, and yours truly leading the pack, keeping everything even keel. And the guys are going to do a part 2. There were so many questions last time. We just ran out of time. So we're going to make sure that they have another open discussion, and they wanted to communicate with everybody and answer any questions moving forward. So get to those questions ready. Mark your calendars. Tuesday afternoon, Beyond the Outer Realm, Dr. Christopher Macklin returns for an uncensored segment. He will discuss truth, healing, and silencing the mind. So, yeah, health wise, I think that'll be very interesting. Wednesday welcomes back Elsa Dillon, all the way from Australia, who will be discussing ancient sites, hidden knowledge, and the extraterrestrial connections. Thursday welcomes back Stephen Bissett, who's going to be picking up where we left off, because we literally ran out of time also with the amount of questions that were coming in. But he's going to be doing part 2, updates on disclosure, 3-Eye Atlas, and whatever you're going to throw at him, he's going to be more than ready to take it. So thank you all. Thank you, Folgers. Thank you, Justice Snicker. Thank you, Steve McGinnis. You have been listening to The Outer Realm on United Public Radio Network 107.7, 105.3 in New Orleans. We shall see you guys next week. Have a great weekend. And thank you to my dear friend Laura DiDio for simply being awesome. Good night, everyone.
Good night.